Welcome to Reflections of the Disciples of Christ on the readings for the fifth Sunday of Lent. And our first reading from the prophet Ezekiel is one of those great, well-known the story of the dry bones. And God takes the prophet to a big valley, and right across the floor of the valley all these dry bones. They're everywhere, as far as you can see, right up to the horizon. The valley is just full of dry, dead bones. And God says to the prophet, what do you reckon? Can these dry bones live? And the prophet importantly says back to God, well, only you know the answer to that, Lord. And Ezekiel is trying to present to the people of his own time a reality check on their situation. Because Israel has been through the wars, literally through the wars. They've seen invasions by the Assyrians, the northern kingdom of Israel ceased to exist. Then the Assyrians have gone, the Babylonians have come in, taken off their leaders into exile, killed the king, destroyed the city. There's a mess everywhere. As it is in those days, in the aftermath of war, you have famine, you have diseases, you have insurgencies, you have groups within the nation itself breaking up and fighting against other for positions of power. The place is in a real mess. Some of the people have come back from exile in Babylon. Some of the people have chosen to stay there. And so the question that the people are asking is there any hope for Israel? The nation is compared to the dry bones. You can see remnants of a glorious past, but the present reality is that Israel as a people are the same as these dry bones. So this reading's put here at the beginning of our fifth week of Lent, as we come closer and closer to Holy Week and the Easter stories, to help the church ponder the situation in which she finds herself today. And we're not talking about the leadership of the church alone here. We're talking about every disciple of Christ, every follower, every baptized man and woman. Because when we look around the church, it's as if Ezekiel could be speaking to us. The world seems to go on regardless of the work of Christians, the existence of churches. It's as if the church, certainly in the West, it's as if the church has become like those Hebrew dry bones, a remnant of a glorious past, but no hope of a future, and totally irrelevant in the present. For Ezekiel, there's no distinction being made here. He doesn't pick out the bones of the king and the bones of the officers and in the bones of the ordinary soldier. No. The same as today, the whole of the church needs to take responsibility for the present dry situation in which it finds itself. Where are our bishops in leadership? You don't hear them speaking against the current trends of the world, those that are contrary to the gospel. Or our clergy, we no longer see them in the streets knocking on doors, visiting where the people themselves are to be found. You don't find them out and about among the poor and the needy. Of course, there's the rest of the church, God's people, the lay people, lacking leadership, lacking an example of what gospel living is really all about, and examples of people taking the hard public decisions in favour of the gospel. The rest of the church wanders around leaderless. And there's no wonder then we break up into little groups and fight over totally unimportant things all around us. The poor and the needy struggle and die. God says to Ezekiel, those dry bones will live. Command that they get up. And repeating God's command, those bones and deserts stood up, and they're covered with flesh. You've got sinew and muscle and flesh and bone, and they're standing there. And that's like many programs of our church. We're to do all these things to get our church up and looking good again. We want to build this and renew that and change that and get this program going and set these numbers up. But it doesn't work. That army in the desert for Ezekiel was still nothing more than dry bones. What it needed was the breath of God. And that's what Lent 5 is really all about. Any transformation of ourselves and of our church and any renewal of the world requires the breath of God. If we're to be anything more than just dressed up dry bones, then God's breath needs to be filling every part of our life, every word we make, everything we do. Because look at that dry bones. They stood up when the breath of God was in them, and they became as a mighty army. That's the important point at the end of this prophecy. They're no longer just a whole lot of bones come alive again. They were like a mighty army, and the image is one filled with power and tremendous zeal and life that moves out of the valley into the world, facing everything, challenging everything. When we speak of the renewal of the church during Lent, we're talking about a transformation that we cannot bring about ourselves, a transformation in which we're called to collaborate with what God is doing and what God seeks to do in us and through us. And the first important step is to acknowledge that we are but dry bones in the world today, dry bones in desperate need of the breath of God. And instead of taking matters in our own hand and setting our own priorities, to strip away all that stops God working in us and through us. Allow ourselves to be taken over, transformed, changed, renewed, that the world may benefit from the army of Christ in their midst. God bless you all.